The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
What a day in Blue Jays land. I can't remember another season like this in this very specific scenario that the Blue Jays are in, where they're selling all of their pending UFAs, but they're not selling completely because the general manager and the organization believe that their window to win will be next season and the year after and the year after that. And their window is open to win. So they're not going to sell, even though they're terrible this year. They're only going to sell the guys who aren't going to be back next year. So it's a retool right on the fly. So 365 days from now, I can be talking to you about how the Blue Jays just bought a whole bunch at the trade deadline. But that's besides the point. I think that's a little later in the conversation, because how this is going to go, how this is going to work is there have been 3 trades since we last talked. Yusei Kikuchi was the last trade we broke down. And since then, on MLB Trade Deadline day, the deadline has now passed. We won't have any more trades to break down, but there have been 3 since we last talked. So we're going to talk about those 3 trades first, and then we're going to talk about Ross Atkins speaking to the media, and one quote in particular that he had to the media post-trade deadline and all that fun stuff. So let's get into, in chronological order, the trades the Blue Jays made today. First up, the Blue Jays traded Trevor Richards to the Minnesota Twins for Jay Harry. And Trevor Richards has not been good. His July ERA, I had it here right in front of me, is a 13.06. And his opponent's batting average is a 348. So you were never going to get a lot for Trevor Richards in a deal, but Trevor Richards has an expiring contract. And a lot of the underscore of these trades these past few days has been, let's sell any pending UFA so this team can get under the luxury tax. And Trevor Richards was going to be paid for the rest of the season, and unloading his contract is helpful. Plus, you get back Jay Harry, who's a utility man. The Blue Jays love guys who can play anywhere in the infield, and Jay Harry is that prospect. He can play anywhere on the diamond, and having him in the organization is another lottery ticket. It's very hopeful. Like, hey, one day maybe Jay Harry can be a good bench guy for us. But Jay Harry is not a top prospect. He's not projected to be any type of big-time major leaguer. He's hopefully one day going to turn into a bench player that's a utility man who can play anywhere. But that's a little bit down the line. Jay Harry is a lower-rung prospect, but he's a lottery ticket for a guy that wasn't very useful to you, wasn't pitching very well, wasn't going to be re-signed this offseason. You unloaded his contract. Thumbs up. That's pretty much, we've gone over that for so many deals here. They've made 8 these trade deadlines, and a lot of them fall along those lines. So Jay Harry, that is what they get for Trevor Richards. The other deal coming up about an hour after that was about 5 o'clock, around 6 o'clock, we got the news that they traded IKF. Isiah Kiner-Falefa was moved to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And in return, this isn't Jay Harry. This is somebody to be excited about. Charles McAdoo, who is the far distant cousin of Bob McAdoo, if you remember, the great NBA player. Charles McAdoo, he is a third baseman, but he might end up being a right fielder or just an outfielder because he doesn't really have a spot at third base. He's not great defensively, isn't a high upside. What you should love about Charles McAdoo is his wicked bat. So he's been moving up in the Pirates organization this year because his bat is unbelievable. I have a slash line here in front of me, and I'll read it off to you. In 87 minor league games total this season, McAdoo's hitting 315, 394, 538. That is a damn good slash line at any level. So that's his minor league right now he's hitting. And his big upside is the bat. His bat speed is phenomenal. The power is there. It will be there, hopefully, at the major league level. It's about him now finding a spot defensively and finding his way to the major league level, because he has not played major league games yet. But that is something definitely in the near future for him with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think he's gonna bounce up this organization very quickly, because this team needs to try out a bat like McAdoo's. That's what they've struggled with these past few years, is getting hits. And here we have a young prospect who is all about his hitting. It's a different it's a different direction that the Blue Jays usually take when they get prospects. They love their Jay Harrys. They love the utility defensive guys. They love their Isiah Kiner-Falefa, who was a great defensive player. He was the utility man. But now they've swapped Isiah for Charles McAdoo. So hopefully one day we get another big bat in this lineup at the major league level. McAdoo was also the let me just make sure I have it correct, number 12 prospect in the Pirates system, according to Baseball America. And they also wrote that he has above average power and bat speed. So be excited about that. Isiah Kiner-Falefa was expendable at this point. Like he was a good addition this offseason. Everything kind of worked out. Like I thought he was one of the big surprises this season until he got injured, and he's on the IL right now, but he's still being traded, and he does have a year left on his contract, so that made it a little more enticing for the Pirates, and that's why you get a little bit more of a return in McAdoo. But thumbs up to this move as well. And lastly, with late-breaking trade after the deadline was Kevin Kiermaier that officially came through. Kevin Kiermaier was moved to the Dodgers. And Kevin Kiermaier is one of the best defensive center fielders we've had the privilege of watching recently for the Toronto Blue Jays. He has been absolutely spectacular. I believe his defensive runs saved above replacement right now is that a 9 or 10. It's absolutely ridiculous what he's been doing in the field. But Kevin Kiermaier can't hit, and he hasn't been hitting all season long. So you were never going to get anything good for Kiermaier. We talked earlier, like what was it, like 2 weeks ago, about how he's on waivers. He was on waivers, and any team in the league had the ability to just pick him up, and nobody did at the time. And now the Dodgers, Kevin Kiermaier has been moved to the Los Angeles Dodgers, have taken him. And they said, okay, well, we have enough hitting. We are a great hitting team. We are the Los Angeles Dodgers. We do not need more hitting. We will take one of the best defensive center fielders in the league off the Blue Jays' hands. The Blue Jays make that trade because they are free of the money now. Round of applause. You are going to be under the tax threshold, and that means going into next season, you are a fresh tax team, and you won't be a double tax team. That's fun. The contract has been moved, and in return, the Blue Jays got Ryan Yarbrough. And Ryan Yarbrough is different from all of the other pieces that the Blue Jays have brought in over these last few days because he is a 32-year-old man. He is not a prospect. He is just a reliever who will now be added to the bullpen of the Blue Jays because they needed a body. They've moved out a lot in the last couple of days, and they needed a body back, so the Dodgers were willing to trade, and he was expendable for the Dodgers, Ryan Yarbrough. So he is now a Toronto Blue Jay. And we have the 3 trades that happened since we last talked. Thumbs up from me on all 3, and that is the overarching theme of the trade deadline for me for the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to read off players in, players out. At the trade deadline, the Blue Jays lost Jimmy Garcia, Nate Pearson, Danny Jansen, Justin Turner, Yusei Kikuchi, Trevor Richards, Isiah Kiner-Falefa, and Kevin Kiermaier. That is 8 players no longer with the Blue Jays organization. And in exchange, the Blue Jays received Jonathan Clase, Jacob Shark, Yohendrick Pinango, Josh Rivera, Cutter Coffey, Edison Paulino, Gilberto Bautista, RJ Schreck, Jake Bloss, Joey Luperfido, Will Wagner, Jay Hari, Charles McAdoo, and Ryan Yarbrough. That is quite the haul for what is that, over the last 4 or 5 days? That is a lot of prospects coming into your system. Now, have the Blue Jays received enough to say, hey, they're contenders for next season? No. That is not the point of all of these deals. What they're doing here is they're unloading the guys who are not useful to this team that is not going to win this season. The 8 players who are out the door do not have a purpose on the Blue Jays this season anymore. The other guys who are remaining with their organization, the Chris Bassets, who they didn't want to trade, Chad Green, who they didn't want to trade, they expect those guys to stick around for 2025. They'd rather use that extra year that they're under contract and keep them in. And the year they expect to contend, which is next year and the following years after that, they want them here. They don't want to move off of guys who could be useful in 2025. So that's why we didn't see like a Bassett move. But the 8 we did see out the door were important for the tax reasons that I keep hammering, because I feel like it's really important to the organization and the prospects. The just dearth of bodies that are now with the Blue Jays. And some of the high-end guys like Class A and Bloss and Shrek and even McAdoo, you're probably going to see them at the major league level this season, which is great for a team that doesn't have a lot of prospects. They needed this moment right now as they're not winning to take advantage of a very seller's market and get back some high-end prospects, some middling prospects, but just the accumulation of guys. So hopefully one day they turn into something. And now it's about moving to this offseason and spending the money. Because the prospects are great. Like I'm very positive on them. I can go over it again. I can just keep repeating myself. But now it's about spending the money in the offseason, which is going to be tough as a fan to get there. And I think that's a good moment to play what Ross Atkins told the media in a Zoom call right after the trade deadline. He apologized to us Blue Jays fans, and here he is doing just that.
I mean, first and foremost, I'm disappointed that we're here, and it's unacceptable that we are here. And I'm sorry to our fans for that. But the things that I've alluded to about finding better complementary pieces that will help us with our roster construction, I think the opportunities, the underlying issues that we can see are clear areas that we can work on are, one, that building a better 26-man roster and the depth around it that complements, the individuals are complementing others in a better way, and especially as it relates to the run scoring. We have to find a way to create a better run scoring environment, and we feel that the handedness, the power opportunities, the dynamic and versatile athletes that we have added will help us towards that as something that has been an underlying issue. That's probably the largest one. On a smaller scale, there's always going to be opportunities for adjustments and deployment that we'll have to continue to dig into and make sure we're improving.
We know that Ross Atkins knows at least part of the issue. Some of the issue is you lean too much on analytics. Like, that's a whole other conversation. I think a lot of people will agree on that. But another part of the issue is that this team hasn't been a good hitting team. And last season, they were a spectacular pitching team. And what let them down were the bats. And this season, both haven't shown up. You haven't had the pitching or the bats. So the bats is still something to focus on. Now it's about continuing the work that you're saying you're doing, because you intend to contend with this team next season, Ross Atkins. So this offseason, it's going to be a long road to get there. But that is the situation we are in, Jays fans. We must now play out the rest of the season. There's a lot to look forward to in terms of the team's development for the rest of the season. But for the working towards contending next season part and acquiring pieces that's going to make this team good, they don't have it yet. It is not on the roster. The full roster that will be a playoff team next season, hopefully, fingers crossed, is not there in Toronto yet. What it is going to take is a lot of great free agent acquisitions or a couple more trades in the offseason. And we'll have to wait a long time to get to that moment, but that is still to come. This roster is clearly not complete. A lot needs to be done to it. So let's look forward to that. And let's watch out for the rest of the season to see how the guys they acquired play and how the rest of the lineup can bounce back. Bo Bichette will be something to watch. There's been rumors lately about how he is not down to sign an extension, which is a doozy. If he's just going to not sign, maybe there's the trade piece for the offseason, because you can't just let Bo walk to free agency. Vladdy's a different conversation, because it sounds like Vladdy wants to stay, and Vladdy has been hitting spectacularly. So we'll get into all that throughout the summer. There's plenty more Blue Jays news to happen, but they got a whole bunch of business done these last few days, and a lot of this team is a new look team going forward. So let me know what you think about the Blue Jays acquisitions and all of the guys leaving and all the guys coming in and the future of the Blue Jays. Let me know wherever you interact with the show, whether it be on our Discord server, whether it be in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter or Instagram or wherever. Let me know. That is it for me tonight. I will be back very soon. And don't forget, hit subscribe on the Jesse Blake Sports Report YouTube channel and like this video if you're watching it right now on YouTube. I appreciate every subscription and every like on every video. Thank you very much. That is it. Good night.
And that is how it's done.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.